Hey YouTube, how you guys doing? My name is Kyle, you know me as Dragonmar, and welcome to a new video. In this video, we'll be talking about how to win games as the IGL slash shot caller. I'm going to be teaching you guys exactly what it means to be a shot caller and how to do it and how it's going to help you win your games. Of course, if you guys enjoy the video, make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and tap that bell. I also want to make sure you guys know I stream every single day pretty much, except for Wednesdays, on Twitch at twitch.tv/Dragonmar. We're so close to hitting Radiant. Hope you guys stop by to come see that. Without any further ado, let's start the video. Alright, so the first order of business is talking about what an IGL is and why it's important. So I'm going to be seeing two terms throughout the video: IGL, which stands for in-game leader, and shot caller. They are essentially the same thing, at least the way I'm talking about them. You might more specifically want to define them, or you might have your own definitions of them, but for all intents and purposes of this video, they are going to be the same thing. Your IGL is going to be your shot caller. They're going to do the same thing. So with that being said, this is the person who is responsible for essentially coming up with strategies and also following through on them with callouts and with information throughout the round. Now, the information throughout the round, that's more of the shot caller part of it. That's when you're calling the shots throughout the round. You're the one who is noting about, enemy positions and maybe alterations to the strategy you previously called. But at the end of the day, this is the role of the person who really is taking control of the team. This is like the leader, hence the IGL, which is in-game leader, right? This is the person who's in charge. So this is extremely important. A lot of people don't understand this. Now, I will say at lower ranks, this tends to be less and less important because of the sort of lack of mics, the lack of people communicating and talking. But the more communication you get, the more important it is to have someone on your team who is coming up with strategies and who is making these callouts, especially on attack, where it is so vital. You can sometimes get away with this stuff on defense, but on attack, you really do need this. And it's so important for a few reasons. The first reason is that it brings the entire team together, right? It brings everybody onto the same page. One of the worst things that can happen in a game like Valorant is when you have teammates who are all kind of doing their own things and no one's really working together. Maybe have one guy defaulting, one guy pushing, and then, two guys just, off over in a corner covering a flank or something, right? That's not very useful. It's good to have everybody doing the same thing. And so in that case, you'd want either everybody rushing or everybody defaulting. You don't want people just all kind of doing their own thing, especially on attack. Remember, I'm going to keep saying it throughout the video. On attack is when you really need that communication, or on retakes, of course, because they're kind of similar situations. However, one another reason why this is so important, why it's so important to have an IGL or a shot caller, is because you relay valuable information throughout the round that sometimes can go unnoticed. Now, this is something I really like to do. Whenever I see an agent on the map, I'll call it out. Whenever I, use an ability, I'll call it out. It's so simple, but not everybody is paying attention to everything all the time. So the IGL sometimes is actually staring at their map a little more than actually staring at the game because of the positioning they have. Generally, they're not the first person in. This gives them some time to sort of look at that map and maybe help out the team and figure out where things are. So because of this, you get everyone on the same page. You make sure nobody's missing any information. And then the third and final thing I want to talk about, and this is obviously way more prevalent for professionals, but you let your teammates just focus on the game. If you're the one making all the calls, your team can focus on fragging out. They can focus on getting the kills. You can call things out for them. So as long as they're listening, they can focus all of their efforts on doing what they do best, and that's kill people. And I think that's a really important piece of this puzzle. Now, once again, I will say that this is more for higher ranks, but it can work at lower ranks too. And obviously this last part really, that's where you see the pros do it. That's why you see IGL's bottom frag so much. It's because they're sort of giving everything they have for the team. This is a very selfless role, and it's very fun to do. So now we'll get into how to do it. All right, guys, so to go over how to be an IGL or a shot caller, I want to do it through some tips. So the first tip I want to talk about is to have confidence. Now, one of the most important things you have to remember, and I think this might just be human psychology, but people want to listen to people who sound confident. If you guys don't sound confident in the comms you're making and your strategies you're calling out, people aren't really going to listen to you. So whenever I make a call in game, if you guys have watched my streams, since I do call a lot, I'll always just tell people to do it. I won't even let them, give me another answer, right? I mean, obviously I'll listen if they want to, but it's really important to have this confidence, even if it's fake, to have this confidence when you're going over your strats in the beginning of these rounds, because you want your team to do it. You don't want people second guessing you. The first sign of a little adversity, they're just going to turn around. If you call a rush, they see one person, they're running the other way. You don't want that. So you want everybody on the same page. And I think one of the most important things to remember is that when you sound confident, your team believes in you. Even if you might not be calling the right strat, it can still work. Remember, I say this all the time. Even if the strategy isn't that good, 5 people doing the wrong thing is still better than only, one person doing the right thing. And I think that's really important to remember in a game like Valorant, where you can have 5 people do something stupid, but if it's stupid and you got 5 people doing it, chances are it's going to work, especially on attack, where you can just overwhelm someone on a site. So remember, have confidence, because if you do not have confidence, your team is going to second guess you, and then that's when your strats start falling apart and people start doing their own things, and suddenly you're not the IGL anymore. You're just another player. All right, tip number 2 is to be clear and concise in your strats that you're calling. So very, very important is that you do not have a lot of time to go over your strategies. If you guys are calling strategies that require your teammates to listen for the full 40 seconds or whatever it is pre-round, you are going to start running into some problems, because oftentimes people AFK a little, maybe they're stuck in the buy menu, they're not really listening. Very, very important, if you are strat calling, to have these strats thought out already. Make sure you're thinking about what you're going to do next round while you're dead, while you're waiting to respawn, whatever it is, and then say it as quickly as possible. You want to be clear with it. It shouldn't be tricky. There shouldn't be like a million steps, right? Nobody is a professional, especially, all of you guys at home watching. A lot of you guys are in gold, silver. You don't want to be calling some 17-step strategy that requires 6 different fakes and like 37 bomb taps or something. You know what I mean? Like, just call the simple stuff. Simple works, and I think that's really important to understand. And having a clear, concise strategy that you can get across to your teammates as quickly as possible, that's very clear. Make sure nobody is going to miss something. You say, hey, 3 up mid, 2 over here, and then once we get in, you watch the flank, okay? Deal, boom, go. 5 seconds, you got your strat, everybody's ready, everybody's on the same page, you know exactly what you're doing. So do not overcomplicate things, guys. Very, very important is that a lot of times what ends up losing people rounds in games of Valorant is that they are overcomplicating their strategies. They are overthinking things. They're trying to do too much. And I think we've all been in situations like that, where you get a teammate who for some reason wants to use their killjoy ult on the other side of the map, when realistically, if they just use it on your side of the map, you guys could run into the site and take site control. But for some reason, they're obsessed with this idea of faking. Guys, do not overcomplicate your strategies. Trust me, it is not worth it. Keep it simple. Stupid. Tip number 3 for being an IGL is you need to have a deep understanding of the game. So this does not mean you have to play every agent. However, if you want to IGL, if you want to shot call, it is very important that these players have a good understanding of how every agent works, how all the maps work, and some of the best strategies on these maps. So these are the players who should be watching pro games. These are the players who should be doing VOD reviews, right? If you truly want to be an IGL, maybe you want to join a team in IGL, right? That's a completely other story. But if you want to do that kind of stuff, you have to understand the game, because you have to be able to adapt your strategy to what the enemy has. So a round might start off pretty normal, you're taking a site, but then halfway through the round someone might get an ultimate, and then you have to be able to adapt and overcome and sort of rethink your strategy to make sure, hey, are we still gonna be able to play our post plant like this? Do we have to reposition because of this ultimate? You have to be able to figure those things out on the fly. So it's really important to have that adaptability, to have that ability to overcome these challenges. And I think a lot of people fall short because they call a strat and then they stop, and that's it. And it's either, okay, it's gonna work, or it's gonna not work. There is no sort of fine tuning as the round goes along, and I think that's a big problem for people, is that they just don't have the deep enough understanding of the game to be able to make these necessary changes. So if you guys are looking to IGL, make sure you have studied the game fairly well, to be able to sort of overcome any challenge or any new obstacle thrown your way. Tip number 4 is that being an IGL or shot caller tends to be a support role. So this means if you are a player who is looking to get into this role, maybe you want to start doing it in your own matches, or maybe you want to start doing it on your own team, it's very important that you are in that support role. You do not want to be a duelist. You don't want to be an entry fragger, in my opinion, if you want to be the IGL, because you want to stay alive to be able to give the call outs as things are happening. So as your duelist enters a site and gains information, you want to be able to call things out as you follow them into site. It's really important, and this is a big reason why you see in games certain players, certain professional players in their pro games at the bottom of the scoreboard, because they are more focused on shot calling as opposed to fragging out in their games. They're leaving that up to their duelists, but they're enabling them. I remember Kiko said this. He said in Valorant, actually, you are more likely, he said, to have your IGL bottom frag than Counter-Strike because of all of the different things that can happen with the abilities. So it makes a lot of sense for you, if you're IGLing or shot calling, to be a support player. You don't have to be a sentinel, but probably not a duelist is what I would say to that. So if you are looking at this as a potential role for you, I would definitely consider playing a support role. That way you can support those duelists who are going in and entering, and you can give them the information they need. And the 5th and final tip I want to give for how to IGL or how to shot call is to have constant communication throughout the round. This is a big one. This is a key to success, keeping everybody updated throughout the round. So what this means is that once pre-round's over, right? Once you call your strategy pre-round, everybody knows what they're doing, or at least what the plan is. You still need to be talking throughout the round, calling things out. Just because a round is started doesn't mean you don't talk anymore. You're still making call outs. Enemy positions, enemy ability usage, sounds that you're hearing. Maybe you hear a spike drop or something. Very, very important to make all these necessary call outs throughout the round. Now, it's not all up to you, right? Your team should be calling things out too. But as the IGL, as a shot caller, you want to be paying attention to this stuff very, very carefully. And on top of that, when I say constant communication, I really do mean constant communication. So you want to be talking to people, maybe rethinking strategies, giving people timing updates. Timing is a huge part of Valorant, looking at that clock and making sure you know exactly how much time you have left and how much time you need to execute your strategy. If you are going for a certain execute onto a site, you want to make sure you have time to do it. So calling out times is very important. You can say at like 1:10, we're going to make our way over to this site or something. And that is all you need, right? Just that little bit of communication instead of saying, all right, guys, come on over here. Or, just being like, hey, look, this is the time, be here. You know what I mean? That stuff is super important. Learning how to be clear and concise, like I said in tip number 2, is a big part of this, because with this constant communication, your team feels engaged throughout that entire round, and they're never losing focus. They're never losing sight of the goal. They're always remembering what you said to do. And a big problem is that a lot of people will call a strategy and they won't talk, and then they'll just stop talking and hope that it works. And I think that's a really poor way to do things, because your job isn't done after you just give a strat. You have to still make calls and make adjustments, especially when players go down. You want to be calling advantages. You want to be making sure everybody is aware of what's going on and enemy positioning. And if something needs to change, because you're communicating constantly, you will be able to make those calls easier, and it will come more naturally to you. So if you are looking to get into this role, if you want to do this in your games, make sure you get used to talking constantly. You might seem a little annoying at first, but trust me, there is a fine line to it, and I think it's really, really important to keep the communication up throughout the round, and just not in the pre-round only. All right, guys, and now I want to go over everything I just talked about, sum it all up for you as a little overview of how to IGL in shot call. So first things first, you're going to want to have confidence. Obviously, super important to have confidence in what you call. Then you want to be clear and concise with your callouts, with your strategies, whether it's on defense or attack. Remember, do not overcomplicate things. That is one of the biggest sort of downfalls of new IGLs and of new players who are trying to take this role, is that they will make things way too complicated. Keep it simple. On top of that, you want to have an extremely deep understanding of the game. The players who are IGLs and shot callers should be VOD reviewing. They should be watching professional games. They should be always trying to hone in on their craft. Then you want to be playing in a support role. Everything else, it's really important that you stay alive so you can constantly be surveying, looking over things. You really just don't want to be the first one in. So whether you play a sentinel, you play your omen or whatever it may be, as long as you're not in that duelist role, you should be fine playing any other support for IG yelling. And then finally, you want to have that constant communication. Super important to be talking throughout the round with your team, making sure everybody's on the same page still, making sure everybody is still ready to go on with the strategy that you called. Just because a round started does not mean your job is over as the IGL. You still have to be talking as much or as much as needed, I should say, as much as needed, because that is what brings these teams together, and that's what keeps everybody moving forward in the same direction. Alright guys, and that is going to end the video. I hope you learned something new. Maybe some of you guys can try out IGLing and shot calling in your games, and maybe take a little more control of your ranked games, especially in solo queue, where you tend not to see a lot of that sort of teamwork. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, comment, and tap that bell. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy, guys. Peace.